This is also based by some hygiene standards. For example, if I don't know, if I deliver raw meat, the truck, of course, I can open the door. So depending where the sensor is, it will go, the temperature will drop for a few seconds. But in general, it cannot go below or over a certain limit for a longer amount of time. These are actions that we want to monitor, and that could be a use case for the data activator. A problem with real-time data until now is it was only for IT professionals. Who of you is working with Power BI? Yes, yeah, this is always what I want to see. So Power BI made it very easy to analyze your data yourself, right? You can just load data, you can mix it, you can match it, you have so many different data sources, you can do so many things. If you ever worked before with other tools, like let's stay in the Microsoft stack with integration services, and then if you tried with reporting services, Report Builder, if you want to try that now, good luck. You will take a lot longer. It's a real pain. And we have a similar situation right now. Real-time data is still a huge pain. If you want to analyze real-time data, you have to do quite an effort. You have to load the data somewhere. You have to set up something to stream. Then you have to set up something to monitor. And where the data activator is going is it's kind of filling this gap with a self-service like no-code experience. So you can imagine a little bit like the Power BI of this field. What are we doing? We are usually monitoring artifacts in Fabric. Microsoft says in OneLake, but I will come to this in a second. So we will monitor something. For example, the examples I said, like does a gate change or anything? If a change happens, if we detect a change based on certain criteria, data activator can then trigger some actions based on these criteria. So in theory, the whole data activator thing is pretty easy to understand. It's a three-step process. We have some data, we have something that is triggering our change, and then we want to take some action. That's the theory. Pretty simple, I guess. Microsoft said it's in Fabric. No, sorry, Microsoft said it's in one, yeah, no, Microsoft said it's in Fabric, but I don't agree fully with this, as you will see later. The data activator will do the monitoring and triggering, so it's the middle part between the data and the action. And at the end, you have different actions that you can take. I'm not sure, is it too low? Can you all see it? At the end, you have a few actions that you can take. At the moment, it's mainly sending messages either via Teams or email. You can trigger a Power Automate flow. And what is about to come is you can integrate it with other applications. All right, let's see how Microsoft sees the whole data activator thing. So that's the official Microsoft slide. It's a little bit more beautiful than mine, I have to admit. On the left side, we have our source. Microsoft, it's the OneLake. And we have here as data sources Power BI, Synapse Data Warehouse, Synapse Real-Time Analytics, and let's say others. Now, the reason why I said I don't really agree that it's OneLake or Fabric is the real-time streaming, because we can use, and actually we have to use, other elements of Azure. For example, we have to use an Azure Event Hub or a Stream Analytics. We have to use other elements that are not part of OneLake and that are not part of Fabric. So I see the marketing behind announcing it at the release of Fabric, but in fact, it's just part of Azure. In the middle, we have our data activator, our no-code user experience. And as mentioned already, it's processing the real-time data. And in the data activator, we have more or less 3 elements. The first ones are models. The second ones are different rules. And the third ones are different triggers. Models represent our data that we want to monitor. The rules, I guess that's self-explanatory. And then we have the trigger that triggers our action. And last but not least, we have our actions. And at the moment, Teams and Outlook are far ahead. Then we have Power Automate, although in my opinion, the integration is lacking a little user comfort, let's say. It's still a big manual process. And there will be custom events. So you can then also, I don't know exactly how it will look like, but it's already announced you will be able to start different different processes in other programming languages, or yeah, let's see how they will do it. So, how does the data activator look? Let's go in our browser, in our Fabric environment. I have an own workspace called SQL Bits, and at the moment I'm in the Power BI area. I will switch down here to our Data Activator tab. And that's now one thing that I found quite confusing. So you have only two elements. One is a reflex that is still in preview, and the other one is a reflex with sample data. All right, that's not so difficult. We choose our reflex. We go here, it's creating our elements, and now we have a few explanations. We can get started, have a few videos and links to the documentation, but we want to get our data. So we can do that up here in this corner, or we have the same button here to get our data. Let's get started here, and then we have two options. One is the simulator. We can simulate things. No, I don't want that. One is Power BI. But that's weird. I can also not do anything here. So what is very confusing at the first point, you open a Data Activator and a reflex, but you cannot do anything. And I don't think Microsoft did that very elegantly, because you have to actually, if we go once back, you actually have to start the reflex from these elements. So you have to start it from the point where you get the data and not from the Data Activator tab itself. All right, shouldn't be a problem. Just to quickly show, we will use some simulation data. In our case, it's packet shipment. We connect. We imagine we would have created this on our own. And now we have here a little overview what happens. What is not visible at the beginning, we have two tabs. One is data and one is design. It jumps automatically to the design, but we want to start from the data tab. So here we have three tables. And here we see the live data as it appears. So in our case, we have packages in transit or packages shipped. Doesn't matter what we take a look at the moment. It's anyway only generated fake data. And the interesting thing is you can see as it appears. So you see these little green movements, and then the old data is going down. Based on this, you can create an object. Let's say we would all just call it package data. You have to assign a key column. The key column is always the column that is identifying an element with a unique ID. In our case, the ID of the package. And then you can assign properties that would be interesting. For example, who is the recipient, or how is maybe the email, if this is interesting, if you want to send him a mail. And we can click on save and go to the design mode. Design mode is then down here, the next tab. And if we're in design mode, we have then here the different packages that we created. This was the one we just created, and this was the one Microsoft created. Here it's split again into events. You have here different events that you can just take a look. You have properties like city or special care that we can reuse in the Data Activator. And at the end, this is our trigger. And our trigger is actually where the whole magic happens. You see always a sample of the data itself. We will do another example in a minute with real data. This is just to get started a little. What Microsoft is doing, it's always showing 5. I think the beginning is 5 of all the IDs you have. So now this is just 5 random IDs it's choosing. And you can see here over time how it changed. So this is the package humidity. It's measuring that, and you see the humidity is going up and down. You can also, to make it, for example, a little more smooth, you can add different summarizations. For example, you could say, I want to have the average humidity over time, because probably, it's measuring, but it's going up and down. Maybe something happens. Maybe the sensor is not that good. So you're more interested in an average. And let's say we want the average over 10 minutes. Maybe let's do the average over 1 hour, and then you see the lines are a lot smoother than they were before. And based on these values, you have then here your detection. So you can then say, okay, based on that, whenever, what do we have here? The exit range is at 30 or 50, we would trigger an event. Down here you say how often that would happen so that you don't get spammed at the end with events. So you have here an overview how many times this would happen. And last but not least, you have then here the act. Here at the moment you can send an email, you can send a Teams message, or the custom action, as I mentioned, is at the moment not available yet. You can create a custom action here, but then it's, as I mentioned, it's not very user-friendly. You have to copy your string in Power Automate, and once you create all of this procedure in Power Automate, then your custom action is available there. Microsoft already announced in the future they will have other integrations, so you can integrate it with other apps, other systems, and so on. That's in general how Data Activator works. I don't know how you feel about it. From my point of view, the graphical interface, I think, can probably have a second version. I think there's room for improvement. But in general, this is how you would do the alerts. Let's come quickly back. This was a quick demo into Data Activator. At the beginning, as we want to understand the whole process, we will focus on the first element. We will focus now on Power BI. The rest we will forget for the moment. From my point of view, this is the easiest way how you can work with Data Activator. And at the end, we will focus on messaging. Teams or Outlook, I don't mind, is the same. You've seen the other ones are a little more complicated because you have to set it up in Teams, in Power Automate, I'm sorry. It works, I tried it, but it's a little pain at the moment. I hope the integration gets better. All right, then let's take a look how we can do that in Power BI. That's the first element, how we can work with Data Activator. So in our case, let's forget about this reflex here. We will close it. I have a small and very ugly report about the flights in London. From London Heathrow, today are scheduled 150 flights, or at least that's what the API delivered until the moment. You see departures and arrivals because I think they're always synchronized. It's always, I don't know why, but the API always is putting the same amounts at arrivals and at departures. And you could filter now, for example, by status. We have different statuses. We have different aircraft types. For example, if you say I probably would not fly with a Boeing, you could filter that here. If you want to filter for a specific destination, we could do that. For example, I probably want to check how many planes are going to Basel. And as you see, my departures is filtering to 1. I checked for the destination name, so from London Heathrow to Basel, 1 plane today, or 1 plane flew already today. And if I do the selection, the visuals keep, of course, this selection. I mean, you're all Power BI professionals, so we know the visuals keep the selection. Based on the selection I do, I can now trigger an alert. So when I go to the visual, and I go here to the 3 dots, I have an option that says here, set alert. And I will do that. And you see a few things. So first of all, we have here on the side a new menu. And this is now the menu for Data Activator, how it's integrated in Power BI. So at the top, you say Data Activator is preview right now. OK, I get that. Then you can choose your visuals. You can also choose it from this list. So I don't have to start the event from the visual I really want to get the data from. I could also say, oh, OK, I started now with this one, but in real life, I want to get the information from the other visual. So you can switch between the visuals. At the moment, it's only at visual level. And at the moment, I really need a measure. So if I just, an explicit measure. So if I just put in a column, that's nice, but it will not work with the Data Activator because I guess it will just execute the DAX query with a measure. But that's my imagination. So in my case, I want to use the card 1 that is filtered right now. I want to see my number of departures, and I want to see if this becomes greater than, let's say, 0 in my case. Wait, I have to click to change it. If this becomes greater than 0, and you see here the applied filters, in my case, it is flights only to Basel-Mulhouse. What should happen then? Either I get an email or I get a Teams message. In my case, we do a team message. I can decide the workspace. And at the end, I can also decide the item. Item is then my reflex. That is the one we just created. That is my backup reflex is now if nothing works. And we will create now a new one. So we will say create a new reflex and create alert. At the background, he's now creating a new data activator reflex. It takes a few seconds usually. And then usually we should go over to the new alerts. Let's click here. And the alerts, the reflex should start in a new tab. So here again, we have our data. So we see now the data that is ingested, that is appearing here. We see it's coming from Power BI. We see the timestamp in UTC. We see some IDs. And I could start creating an object in here. But Microsoft Power BI did that already for me. So if I go to my design tab, I already see all the elements. So I have my event, my departures. I have my properties, in my case also the departure. If I would like to add a new property, I can do that up here with new property. And in the properties, I can then add new ones. At the moment, we only have this one measure, but I could add additional ones. So I could make more complex scenarios than that. This we don't need in this case, as we anyway only have one property. And at the end, we have our trigger. Our trigger, again, shows us here the data that appeared. Today, only one plane left to Basel. So we only have here one value. As you can see up here, the wheel is continuing all the time, so it's refreshing all the time. So while you have it open, I mean, my Power BI report is refreshing, but I'm not sure if maybe Basel was not the best example. If so many planes are starting right now, if they would appear here. In my case, I just want to get informed each time when a plane to Basel starts. So whenever this is above 0, this is my trigger. And at the end, I can send a Teams message. Departures become greater than 0. I can also say plane to Basel left and an optional message. And then I can save the whole thing. I can also send a test alert. And then hopefully, yes, Data Activator was writing to me in Teams, plane to Basel left. And that's already our first and the most easy task you can do. So if you start using Data Activator, I would really highly recommend to start with Power BI. It's really great to learn. It's very easy. You can do this in a few clicks. And you can already try to learn a little with it. All right. That was the example with Power BI at the beginning and the message in Teams. Yeah?
When you do the data activator from Power BI, is it always through the alert option?
Sorry? If
is it always through the alert option? You know, the 3 dots and then alert?
It's always at the 3 dots, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And probably because this question might appear at one point, you would think we already have that in dashboards. What is the difference? For very easy ones, there is no difference, but you can do quite complex things, as we will see in the next step. So Data Activator is a lot more advanced than the things we had so far. All right. What we did now, we had our monitor. Our monitor was our Power BI report. We had our detection. Detection we did in Data Activator. And at the end, we sent a message with Teams. We always have these 3 components. And the Data Activator in the middle is connecting our monitoring and our acting. Now, how can we work with live data? Live data is a little bit more complicated. In general, Microsoft says we have 2 more elements how we can trigger data. One is the Synapse Data Warehouse, but it's not really live data. The second what we have is Synapse Real-Time Analytics. So when you work with Data Activator, I can already tell you, a big amount will be working with live data. That's actually like you work with Power BI, and the most of the tasks are in the back end to prepare the data. It's a little bit the same here. So if you work with a Data Activator to trigger a value and then send a message is the easy part. The bigger part is really to create all of the live data. What do we have here? Again, we have the same principles. We have a monitor, we have a check, and we have something to start. As a monitor, we will use now the Fabric event stream. You could also use stream analytics. There are multiple ways, and now there's a streaming warehouse, I think it's called. I never worked with it. I think it also works with this. But in general, you need one of the streaming elements. We will use now the event stream, as it seems for me like the most accessible one. Looks like this on the, to zoom in a little. Can you see it? It's a little blurry, yeah? On the left side, you also have your input, what is usually one of the streaming sources. And at the end, you have an exit, where a target where the data will appear. We will also take a look at this in a minute. The data in our case will come from a REST API. Then we will check the data again with the data activator, and at the end we will do the same. We can send a message. We could also send an email for a change, but it's more or less the same. So if we go back to our flights, let's close the Power BI report, and let's move away from data activator. Let's move into our real-time analytics. So at the moment, I think the event house works and the event stream. As far as I remember, the KQL database and the KQL query set cannot trigger a reflex at the moment. So you still need an event stream that is working with them. As I mentioned, for me, it seems like the event stream is the easiest way to go. I show you one that I have already, and then we will create one. So I created here the event stream for departures. And it's actually, when you look at it, it's a pretty straightforward thing. You have 3 elements again. You have a data source, you have your event stream, and you have your target. Can be also multiple, so you can take data from multiple data sources, and you can stream into multiple targets. And except for this, it's actually pretty straightforward. So you connect it with your data source. You see here the preview. You see the runtime logs. You see here, if you would have multiple sources, how they are joined, what format they have, JSON or whatever. And at the end, you have a target. Also here, pretty easy as it looks. Believe me one thing, it's more difficult to do, and there are many challenges on the way. For example, let's create a new one. Let's go here to our workspace, and we create a new event stream. We call it, what did we have? The departures we have, event stream arrivals. We create it. Takes usually again a second or two. And the thing is, for me, the big thing, you have a limited amount of data sources. You can go over this menu up here, or you can use the menu up here, down here. Again, we have sample data. I think that's, at this time we've seen now sample data, we don't need that. So we are actually left with 3 elements. Azure Event Hub, Azure IoT Hub, and a custom app. Does anyone know the difference between an Azure, or do you even know what an Azure Event Hub is the question. A few people don't, a few people do. An Event Hub is actually an endpoint where you can send data. That's actually what we're doing right now. I wrote a Python, ChatGPT and me, we wrote a Python notebook that is taking the data from a REST API, and it's sending it against this stream, this Event Hub. Event Hub and IoT Hub are more or less the same. The only thing IoT Hub could write back, but this is not an option here. So you can just imagine the sample data is not an option. These 2 are the same, and then we have the custom app. So your data sources are more or less limited to 2 things, an Event Hub or you write your own app. So the choice is not very big here. As ChatGPT and me created already an Event Hub, I will choose this one. Arrivals Event Hub. You have to do a connection. I already did that, so I can just take my Event Hub. Otherwise, you could create an Event Hub in Azure. And once you have an Event Hub, I have two now, one for arrivals and one for departures. And once you're here, you see all the data that is live streamed now to the event hub. So I have many, many events that are happening in the background. And so the data is just waiting there. It's like a JSON that you send. It's waiting until someone is picking it up. And this is in my case here, that's the wrong one. He's not picking up anything. That's in this case my my Synapse real-time analytics thing here. Then you have the connection. You need a consumer group. That's the default one. And your format is JSON. You add it. And now up here, it starts connecting to it. You see already it starts checking for the event hub if something, if data is there. And you will see a preview after a few seconds, as we're in a live demo, probably minutes, no, in a few seconds. And this data was now live sent to the event hub. So we have here flight IDs. We have the runway where the flights are starting from. We have different, we have the flight number, we have the operator, we have code shares. So we have many, many, many informations about the data, the flights. Also very interesting, we have things like scheduled out, estimated out, actual out, scheduled off. So we have all the data when the plane should leave, when it should have left, when it actually left, when it should arrive, if it arrived already or not. We have a lot of data here. We have also how much percentage of the flight was done already, what aircraft type it is, how big the distance is, and for example, somewhere here is also delay, what will be quite important. The terminal, in case there is a change in terminal, you can just monitor this. Also the gate is here somewhere. But it's, yeah, we could fill another session with the data you get in aviation. I was actually really impressed. Important, they all start from London Heathrow or arrive at London Heathrow. In our case, we have, what did we say? We have arrivals, so they all arrive here and start from somewhere else. What makes sense that we have it here in the destination code. Then we have our event stream itself, and at the end we need to add a destination. And the destination, again, we have a custom app. We have a lakehouse, a KQL database, and a reflex. So the lakehouse and the KQL database can be targets, but with our focus on reflex and Fabric Data Activator, we want to work with this. So we had a new one that was called Flights London in my workspace equal bits, and that was the one we just created. Let's add it, and now the data should appear in my reflex. So you have two choices. We already created this reflex from Power BI. If it wouldn't exist, we could just start here with the event stream, and here at the end we could say we want to create a new reflex. So we cannot create a reflex when we go in reflex, but we can create, or sorry, we cannot trigger the data from there, but we can do it from here. So we can from here connect to an existing reflex. And from now on, all the data of arrivals will automatically will be picked up by our stream, event stream, and be streamed into our reflex. And we can work with this. How does that look? Let's go again back to our Flights London. If we go back to data, we should now see a second event. We should. Let's refresh. Now here it is. So we have now the event stream of the arrivals. It's now listening to the event hub for events, and here we are. So this data is now streamed live from the API, coming through our event stream and ending up here. And we see now the last minute we had 225 rows, so London Heathrow starts getting busy. And from now we can create our objects. So one thing we probably want to do is we want to, wait a second, I have a slide for that. Also to switch a little between the slides. Let's go back here. Do you know what the EU flight compensation regulatory is? I wanted to actually give this example until I realized it doesn't apply anymore in UK, so I'm not sure if this was the best example. But in the European Union, when you are on a flight that either starts from the EU or arrives in the EU, and the plane has a certain delay, you get some money. And unfortunately, the flight companies, they don't have something like data activator. So even if you're delayed, they don't send you the money automatically. So we could help them with a data activator to trigger all the flights that are longer than they should, and then they can automatically start the process to give you back your money. And what I found very interesting, so it's about distance and delays. And what I also didn't know, for example, if you fly up to 1,500 kilometers and you're 2 hours late, you get 250 euros back. If you're 2 hours early, you get 125 euros back. I'm not sure if this ever happened in the history of flights. The same for if it's between 1,500 and 3,500 kilometers, and my highlight, more than 3,500 kilometers. So if you fly to Los Angeles and you arrive 4 hours ahead of time, you will get 300 euros back. So yeah, if you didn't learn anything today, probably this. My second question is, what do they do if they're early? Will they just fly around? Well, they say, no, we're too early. But yeah, it's a different topic. But yeah, unfortunately, it seems like the airlines, I had a flight canceled last week, sorry. I had a flight canceled last week, thanks to Lufthansa. So actually I had to fly the next day. Until now, they didn't write to me, I guess because they didn't have data activator. So what we can do is we can help them. We can, for example, go back to our event stream. We do it now with the arrivals, and we want to create a new object that should appear here. And our new object will be called, how will it be called? Delay of flights. Then our key column, we have to tell data activator what is the key column that identifies our row, our flight as unique. In our case, it's the flight ID. And then I want to select all of the things that are of interest for me. For example, for me, this could be the delay if I find it. I should have written how it's called. Yeah, new data just came. Arrival delay, that sounds good. I also want to see the status. And probably I want to see the origin city and the destination city. So let's save this as a new save and go to design mode. We enter now design mode. And we see now it took randomly, again, 5 values of our 225 flights. And I see now how they performed, or I see in general the data. I see the properties like arrival delay. Here we have arrival delay of 660 seconds, 120 seconds, 0. And if you were early, but dangerous here for the airline, only 600 seconds early. So what we could do now is we want a new trigger. And sorry, I always click on triggers here, but I have to click on new trigger up there. We want to start with an existing property. We want to start with our arrival delay. So it shows now the arrival delay from the 5 sample flights we have. We can now say if it becomes greater than, so I think from 2 hours on it was, in seconds this should have been or should be 3,600 seconds. So once an arrival has a more delay than 3,600 seconds, I should get some money back. So I can say if it becomes greater than 3,600, now I can decide it's actually, oh no, it was no flight. So from these flights we chose, none of them was that much delayed, but it shows me 7 flights. Now since we started this element, 7 flights would have been in this category. So 7 flights had more than 2 hours delay. And now I can decide, and this is really a big strength of the whole procedure, if it's every time, if it's only number of times, or if it stays. If it stays, doesn't make sense with flights, but for example, you want to know it for the temperature. If I monitor a truck that is delivering raw meat, okay, if someone opens the door and the temperature drops for a second, I don't really care. If the temperature is for 10 minutes above a certain level, I care. And I don't want to get an alert every time the guy opens the door. So I could say, for example, if it stays for 10 minutes above 3,600 seconds, imagine the truck. In my case, it doesn't make sense. And also nice, you can filter, and for example, you can say, I only want, I don't have that now here, but I could say only flights that are from European Union because we're in London or something. Anyway, another distinguishing is between, and that's very important, becomes greater and is greater. Can anyone imagine what is the difference? Becomes is the moment it jumps over the threshold, and is every time it's above. So let's take again our food truck. If I say becomes greater than, the first time the temperature is above, it tells me, hey, this truck, the temperature is above your limit. If I say is greater than, it tells me the first time, but also every time it's measuring the temperature is still above. As long as it is above this limit, it will always trigger an alert. So it can be I will have a million messages if I don't configure this properly. But you can see, I can do it very fine granular. I can trigger changes, enter ranges, exit ranges, increased by is less than new data arrival. So if we have a new flight or something arriving in London, I can also do that. But for the moment we say if each time it becomes greater than 3,600, then we want to have, let's do again a Teams message. And we can say you get, your flight from, you can also add fields, by the way. So let's say, what did we do? We did arrivals, I guess. Destination, destination city. I can do this in brackets from dest city is more than 2 hours delayed. And then I can say you get money back. I can save that. And now every time a flight, question? Every time a flight is more than 2 hours delayed, I would get a message. Of course, you have to imagine I can trigger other procedures. For example, that the company is then starting an internal process or something. You have to imagine it like this. Yes?
Sorry, it just follows on from that where you've got your recipient list. Can you add fields in there? So can you sort of programmatically control who gets the alerts? You may be covering that in a minute or not, I don't know.
So the question was if you can like modify the messages, like have a different recipient list or something like this. Yes, you can. Not here. Here you can. I mean, that's just to test, honestly, like a Teams message or an email. If you add a custom action and you start a Power Automate flow, there you can do everything. For example, you can get the ID. You can connect it to another, I don't know, to another server. Get the ID, get the emails of all the people in the flight, and then trigger another process or something like this. For now, that should be it. We saved it. I want to say send a test alert, and it should pop up. Here we are. My flight from sample value is more than 2 hours delayed. All right, that's a nice destination. But in general, you can use variables, and then it will replace them. This was a test alert, but if something really happens, it's replacing them. All right, then this would be the how you work with the live streaming data. I have one more example. I think that could be quite interesting. I'm not sure if we will have the time. 6 minutes we have. 5 minutes? Oh, talk too much. Did someone ever work with Google Flights? Google Flights is like a search engine where you can look for flight prices. It also has an amazing API. And for example, if I want to go from Heathrow, someone tells me a nice holiday destination. Okay, you had your chance. Honolulu, it is. And you can say, I want to a country, I don't know why I have to enter. Okay, that all fits, we don't have so much time. Outbound, when do I want to fly? I want to fly in December 2nd until December 22nd, 20 days Hawaii should be enough. First, no, not first class. The number of adults, I don't have friends, I travel alone. No children, stops, and probably I think direct is not possible. Exclude airlines, maybe Boeing, no. All right, and then I can say I want to search for this. Oh no, I have to check if I'm a bus. This always happens in demos, I guess. It's generating the API, and the nice thing is I can export that. So I have a JSON URL, and you need a valid browser, okay. Yeah, well, I thought I was logged in. Let's try that again. That's the demo gods. All right, it shouldn't be. What I wanted to tell you is, I mean, I did the example already. You can just add the API then to a Power BI report. I mean, it's a normal REST API. Power BI will automatically split the JSON into a data set, and you can create a visual and upload it to Power BI service. So I did this in my SQL Bits test backup workspace. Thank God I did this. And when you go to the report, you have then, this was now for 2 people, I chose last time, but it was again, you see the prices. You would have to trigger a refresh every day. And then you could say, for example, if the price is going, you set an alert, and you can say if the price is going not greater, below, less than 2,000 for 2 people. That was 200, I will not find a flight. So if a flight would go down like 1,000 per person, it would trigger me a message, and I would get a Teams message that the flights are now cheaper. So actually, this is, I think, at the moment also the easiest approach to really make use of Power BI, use it to get the data, and send the triggers from Power BI. If you're more experienced or you really want to experience the live streaming data, you can also do that. It just takes a little more effort, I can tell you. And sometimes you will be stuck because it's still a little bit buggy, to be very honest. But it's in preview. I think it will improve. So how can I use it, and how will it continue? The first thing, everything has a time-related update. Everything with a time-related update, you can use it. Shipping status, delays, and so on. Then things that have to or cannot pass limits. We had the temperatures. We had like the times. Everything with times you can use. And as I mentioned already, it's a little bit buggy at the moment. So once in a while you will be stuck and recreate the whole flow because suddenly it doesn't work anymore. Sometimes it's also details, like I did this event stream. You know, you get it from the event hub, you do the event streaming, you send it to the reflex, and suddenly you get the error message. I mean, you can also stream CSV files or in a CSV format. Suddenly you get the error message, it's just accepting JSON at the end after you spend 2 hours building this whole pipeline and ingesting all the data. So it's still, yeah, as I mentioned, but I think we're on a good way. As I mentioned, the biggest or bigger challenge is the streaming data, and from my opinion, the best workaround, especially for beginning, is use a Power BI report. Ingest the data there, do a daily refresh or how often you want, and then set a trigger in Power BI. All right, the Power BI report demo I did now, the API I didn't want. I think also it would have been a little short in time. And one outlook that was from the release, the moment they released it, that was an old slide. Microsoft, I realized, had more events that are triggering. So they had KQL, what doesn't work at the moment, and they had a SQL data warehouse, what is not triggering at the moment. I just realized it, so probably, I don't know, it's planned, it disappeared again. This they released in May last year, and then it was gone. That's the end of the session. If you have any questions, I think we run out of time, but I will be here for a few more minutes. Otherwise, please share the feedback. That's very important for the conference and also for all of the speakers. And otherwise, enjoy your Saturday, enjoy the rest of the conference, and I wish you a nice day. Thank you.